So I want to show you how to create a chart or graph in Google Sheets from your data. Now this video is mainly aimed at those who are doing the inertia balance lab in physics, but this works for anyone. So there's several ways you can start out. If you're on your Chromebook and you click on the magnifying lens option in the bottom corner of your screen, you should then have a list of all your apps, and Sheets, which is Google Sheets, should be listed there. If not, you can go to Google and log in. This is your Google Apps button. Click on that. Sheets is here, or you can go into Google Drive, and in Google Drive, you have a button that says New on it, which we're just waiting for it to load. But you should have a button that says New that you can click, and it'll say, what do you want? Google Sheets, and you can create a new spreadsheet. First thing you want to do, of course, is give it a title, and in this case, it's going to be the Inertia Balance Lab, but change that for whatever. And typically in this, it's going to be set up just like a data table where, in this case, it might be something like the mass and put your units in parentheses after it. And then here you might have your actual trials that you do, you're measuring time, you're recording length, and you put those values in here. But each of these would need to have a heading like trial 1 in seconds, trial 2, and you might even have something like an average column in seconds. You might have, in the lab we're doing, you might have the period in seconds, and you might have the period squared, which on the computer is easiest to use the caret, which is over the 6, period squared, which would be in seconds squared. So this is where all your data goes. Now there's a little bit of a problem, because if you have a data table set up like this and you try to graph it, and you say, well, I just want this column A and I want this column G over here, you can hold the control key down, you can click those two columns, but Google Charts, Google Sheets doesn't really like this very well when it's making a chart. So the best thing to do is to copy this data down, have all your data up near the top, and then copy the things you want to graph down. Now I've kind of cheated and I've gone ahead and set one up here. So I'll kick over to that window and show you what I have set up. I have this set up. I went ahead and took some data. I have mass in grams, period, which is the time for one vibration, and period squared. And I want to make a chart out of this. Now because it gets a little confused, I'm going to separate this chart into two separate charts. I'm going to put the mass down here, I'm going to copy it, and then I'm actually going to cut this data out with Control X, and I'm going to paste it in here with Control V. So I have two charts now. I have the period versus the mass, and I have the period squared versus the mass. So to create your chart, highlight the data you actually want to chart, including the two headings. Notice I don't have any G's or S's in here. And I go to Insert, and I go to Chart. And here are some suggestions. Well, this is the one you want. Typically, it's a line graph. And there's some oddities on here. Those can all be changed under customization. First of all, the heading. This is the inertia balance calibration graph, is what I'm going to call mine. You might have a different name. Don't ever just put mass versus period or repeat the labels on the graph, because that's redundant. You don't want to do that. And then down at the very bottom, you have this option, which is fantastic. You have a trend line. And you can actually see what they look like. Oh, is it exponential? No. This one's pretty much linear because it's a straight relationship. And then I want a different color on this one, and I want to make it a little easier to see, might make it thicker, but there you go. And the label needs to be changed, and it should show the equation. Now, near the top of these options, there is a trend line, or a legend, I should say. The legend, I typically change it and put it inside it because it makes the entire equation show up. If you have data up here, you have other options. Experiment with it and see where it goes. But now this is a good looking graph. So we simply hit Insert, and there it is. And we're going to shrink it down a little bit and make it a little easier to work with. Drag it up here, move it, click it once, and then you can drag it and put it off to the side next to this. I'm going to make it a little smaller. I may insert some blank lines. If you need to edit or change anything, this little pull down menu here says Advanced Edit, and you're right back where you were on the chart editor. So everything looks good, so I'm going to leave it like that. And now I'm going to do the same thing down here. I'm going to do mass versus period squared, and I'm going to insert a chart. I'm going to give it a better title. Again, it's going to pick the wrong kind because it doesn't know any better. I'm going to give it a better title in here and say this is the inertia. Oh, not there. Not in your data. I'll let you get off of it. And this is the inertia balance calibration curve, I'm going to call that. And again, I want a trend line. So this one is more exponential. It's more of a curve, so I'm not going to use a linear fit. I'm going to make it solid, and this one needs to be some other beautiful color. And I'm going to use, again, the equation as the label. And then up at the top, I'm going to tell it to show the legend inside, like that. So there's my graph. And the labels all look correct. Scaling looks right. Title looks good. So I'm going to insert it. And again, shrink it down a little bit. Make it more reasonable. I'm going to actually make it the same size as this one, just kind of line it up. And now I have both the graphs I'm looking for. So that's how you, in a nutshell, create a graph with a best fit line in Google Sheets. If you have any questions, drop me an email.